Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's sourdough bagel tutorial. So I am very excited to share this video with you guys today because you don't understand, or maybe you've been following me for a long time and you actually do understand, but bagels are like definitely one of my favorite foods, right up there with tacos. Obviously, you guys know I've gotten really into sourdough over the last couple of years. And so when I stumbled across this idea of sourdough bagels, I was very excited. Now today's recipe, I basically found on Pinterest through a blog called Little Spoon Farms. And she actually shares a bunch of really cool recipes that I have followed or kind of adapted a little bit, but that's where this recipe originally kind of came from. It's funny because when I first stumbled across it, I had a thought that there's potentially a lot of you guys are thinking the same thing, and that is there is no way that making bagels is this easy and actually going to taste good. Because if it was, then it would be way easier to find tasty bagels. Because I don't know about you guys, but I'm not just cool with like any bagel. In fact, there are a lot of bagels that I have tried that I'm like, this is a horrible bagel. Besides that, what I wanted to say is a lot of you guys have asked me when I posted my like super easy sourdough loaf video, which if you haven't seen that, I guarantee you that is the easiest, best tasting sourdough bread you will ever make. So I'm gonna go ahead and link that down below. Super sustainable. I learned the recipe from my sister-in-law. She hasn't bought bread in over a year since this point. Like so easy and sustainable and realistic as a mom. Anyways, that'll be linked down below. But a lot of you guys asked me in that video, how long can you let your bread sit on the counter? Now, that question I feel like kind of applies to this too, because really you probably could let bread, if it's covered, sit on the counter for a couple of days. But here's the thing, and this is why ultimately I want to figure out how to grind my own wheat berries, because similarly, and this may blow your mind, it may not, but similarly to like juicing, for example, once you break open those wheat berries, really once you pick it, but once you break open the wheat berries, the nutritional content starts to plummet. And the same thing is true for like once it's made into flour and once you bake it and once it's out on the counter. And so there's a couple reasons why I stick my bagels and my bread in the freezer, but that is one of them. And the thing that you have to know is that if you do it right, which is not difficult really, it's just like a Ziploc baggie or a stasher baggie. But if you do that and you put them in the freezer, it maintains not only the nutritional content, but also the taste and the quality. It's literally like pressing the pause button. You need to really slice your bagel in half before you put it in the freezer. And when you take them out, you literally can just crack them open, because you sometimes have to use a little butter knife and just like pull them apart. And then you just stick them straight in the toaster and it's amazing. It does not taste like it's out of the freezer. It's the best hack to not only pause the nutritional content, but also then you're not like rushing to eat all your bread. You know, sometimes you're like in a bread mood and sometimes you are not as much in a bread mood. And if you have them sitting and aging on the counter, you kind of feel this pressure to have to eat them. So that is my biggest hack that I just wanted to throw out there at the top of the video. Now, with all of that being said, we're gonna jump in. Happy baking, guys. You're welcome. These are amazing. And yeah, let's bake. All right, guys, so I started off by adding 255 grams of room temperature water. And you can see I'm adding a little bit more in because I want it to be like pretty exact. Then I added in 10 grams of pink salt. Next up, I put in 40 grams of honey. I used raw honey in my recipe, but I feel like you could use any honey. Similarly to the salt, I used pink salt. You could probably use a different salt. Then I added in 100 grams of starter. Now, my starter was really dry on this day because I've been experimenting with a lower hydration starter, but I've done both and they've both turned out great. Then I took my little concoction and I tried my best to kind of mix it all together. And then I added in 500 grams of flour. Now, the original recipe calls for bread flour, but I just want to say that I've only done this recipe with regular all-purpose flour and it works out great. Like, it's super chewy and delicious. As you can see, I added a little bit too much flour, so I took a little bit out. Then I did a rough mix of my ingredients before I put my bowl into my mixer. Now, I use my mixer to mix my dough together for about 7 to 8 minutes because this is kind of a big part of the whole bagel thing. You don't have to have a mixer to make bagels, but what you do have to do to make bagels is really mix and kind of beat your dough together. That's a big part of what makes them so chewy, especially without bread flour. So I use my mixer, like I said, for 7 to 8 minutes, but if you're mixing by hand, it's probably going to be closer to like 10 plus minutes. You're going to want to really get that dough all combined. Then I took a tea towel that I had and I got it fully damp because I was entirely out of plastic wrap. I do both. I kind of alternate. So when I do a towel over my dough that I'm going to let sit on the counter, I like for it to be a little bit damp and a little bit on the warmer side. Now, as you can see, this is the size of the dough. So this is how it's going to start when you set it out overnight to rise. And then I cover it with my towel. You let it rise for anywhere from like 8 to 16 hours. I've done both. The timing really fluctuates with sourdough. A lot of sourdough is like feel and look, but as you can see, it will be ready for you to go when the dough has at least doubled in size. So then I took my dough scraper and I pulled it out of the bowl. And then you're going to want to divvy it up into 8 pieces of dough. Now, I'm not super precise, as you can tell. I have a little bit of a method of how I separate them, but my bagels are all like a little bit of a different size. And once I have them in their chunks, you're going to want to fold the dough. Now, your dough is probably going to change each time. And the first time I did it, it was super scary because my dough was very, very wet. I want to encourage you though, do not give up, even if you think it's not going to work, because I have found myself surprised many times making different baked goods and especially bagels at how they still turn out. So you're going to get a knack as you go, like how you want to fold them and roll them and all of that. But basically the gist is, as you saw, I folded the dough over on itself till it was a little firm, and then I stick my thumb through the center to make the hole, and then I kind of roll the bagel donut situation around my fingers. It's funny because Logan actually walks around making this motion sometimes now and goes, roll the bagels. And I go, yes. I also kind of let the weight of the bagel pull itself down on different sides to kind of even the distribution of dough in the ring, if that makes sense. So if one area feels too thick, I might kind of hold on to it and let it kind of pull itself down. You don't really want the dough to rip because that's gluten that you're forming and you don't want to rip those strands. So you really want everything to stretch and get tight. And then obviously when you're loosening the bagel up and kind of trying to make it bigger, you want it to loosen and get bigger without ripping. So you want to be gentle as you're folding and as you're pulling and all of that. Logan dreams of the day that he can make bagels with me. He loves watching, and I get him involved with cooking and even with baking the bagels where I can. Like, he watches up close when I boil them, which is what we're about to do. But yeah, here I am again, as you can see, folding, tightening, and just making my bagel shapes. Now, don't worry, the size that they are now is not going to be the end size of the bagels. They're going to grow and puff up a ton when we drop them in the boiling water, but this is just your initial bagel shaping. Also, I'm sure there are a ton of different ways to make bagels and shape them. If you have a different technique, feel free to let me know down below, but this has worked out really well for me, this way of folding and then rolling, and yeah. So once your bagels have been shaped, then you're going to take a damp cloth again, or plastic wrap or beeswax wrap, and you're going to let them go for their second rise. Now, while that's happening, I like to get a pot of water set on low to get ready for the bagel boiling. And I also drop in, by the way, a tablespoon of sugar that I mix in. And if you leave the pot going low for a while, when you want to turn it up to boiling, it goes much faster. So once my bagels had had a chance to sit and puff up and rise a little bit more again, which can take anywhere from like 30 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the temperature of your kitchen, that is when I was ready to boil my bagels. Now, this is like very exciting, like probably the most exciting part, because you will see it's a very active step and it's very exciting, and the bagels really grow. So don't stress out, even though this kind of does look a little stressful. You want to get your water going to a rolling boil. I do 4 bagels in a pot because I feel like that gives me the perfect amount of room. And as you can see, I like to stick a spoon through the hole initially when I drop them in and kind of give them a swirl to really like accentuate that hole and make sure it doesn't close up. And once they're all 4 in, I usually set the timer for like 90 seconds. And then I flip my bagels over and then I let them go for another 2 minutes. So it's really about 2 minutes per side. But because it takes me a minute to really get the bagels in, that's why I do like 1.5 minutes on the first side once I set the timer. And then I do a full 2 minutes on the second side. And it really is satisfying to watch them puff and grow. And I almost feel like the camera's not even doing it justice at how puffy and awesome they look when they come out of the water. You want to make sure to use some kind of slotted spoon or spatula so that when you take the bagels out, you are able to leave behind, most of the water, like it can come out. And so then I repeat the process with the other 4 bagels. And then once those were done, I took them out of the water. Now, if I wasn't filming, and honestly what I usually do is I will coat the everything but the bagel seasoning on the first 4 sets of bagels while the second set is boiling, because you have to let the bagels cool off a little bit before you do this. And I did not put anything on the top of the bagels, so it's just the water in the dough that's allowing the toppings to stick to it. But you don't want the bagels to completely cool off and dry off, because like I said, that's kind of what helps it stick. So I didn't do those other ones ahead of time this time because I was filming, but that also just tells you there's a little flexibility. I just do know the longer you wait, the less toppings stick. But look at how beautiful these bagels are looking. So I also, by the way, recently did bagels without any toppings, and I just want to throw out there that those were really delicious as well. But yeah, then you bake your bagels in the oven at 425 for anywhere from 25 to 28 minutes, and they come out amazing. Now, the other day I accidentally baked my bagels for like 30 to 35 minutes and they were very dark brown, but I'm just going to throw out there that those were amazing too. And they kind of gave off like a pretzel vibe. Super delicious. We actually ate those straight out of the oven, dipped in butter. And yeah, I like to let my baked goods cool on a cooling rack, and we wait until they're fully cool to cut them in half and then put them in Ziploc baggies, like I mentioned earlier, to store in the fridge. And then when we want to eat them, we just take them out and pop them directly into the toaster. All right, guys, so that is it for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you like this video and you want to see more of these kinds of videos, please give the video a thumbs up. It really helps to support my channel. And let me know what you think down in the comments below. I hope you feel excited and empowered to make bagels, because my life has been changed. And with all of that being said, I will, God willing, see you guys back here soon with another new video. Bye, guys.